All right. So tonight we're going to read from a really sweet little book called Happy is the One Who Is Nothing, Letters to a Friend by Krishnamurti. It's just a lovely, lovely little book. And I'm going to read tonight from chapter 15. The chapters are very small and very to the point. So now remember, this is Letters to a Young Friend.
What's the backstory?
I don't know it.
Oh.
I only know it's Letters to a Young Friend. So here is Krishnamurti speaking, well, writing, I guess. There is so much discontent, and one thinks an ideology is going to solve everything, even banish discontent, which of course it can never do. Communism, religion, or any other organized conditioning can never do away with discontent. One tries every way to smother it, shape it, give it content, but discontent is always there. To be discontented, one thinks is wrong, normally not right, and yet one cannot do away with it, so it has to be understood. To understand is not to condemn. So really, go into it, watch it without any desire to change it or channelize it. Be aware of it as it operates during the day. Perceive its ways and be alone with it. Freedom comes when the mind is alone. Just for the fun of the thing, keep the mind still, free of all thought. Play with it. Don't make it a very serious affair. Without any struggle, be aware and let the mind be still. There is frustration as long as one is seeking fulfillment. The pleasure of fulfillment is a constant desire, and we want the continuity of that pleasure. The ending of that pleasure is frustration, in which there is pain. Again, the mind seeks fulfillment in different directions, and again, it meets frustration. This frustration is the movement of self-consciousness. The mind wants to escape again into some form of fulfillment. The struggle to fulfill brings the conflict of duality. When the mind sees the futility or truth of fulfillment, in which there is always frustration, then only can the mind be in that state of loneliness from which there is no escape. When the mind is in this state of loneliness without any escape, then only is there freedom from it. Separation exists because of the desire to fulfill. Frustration is separation. No shocks must ever take place now, even fleeting ones. These psychological reactions affect the body with adverse effects. Be very strong inwardly Be firm and clear. Be complete. Don't try to be complete. Be complete. Don't depend on anyone, on anything, any experience or memory. The dependence on the past, however pleasant, only prevents the completeness of the present. Be aware and let that awareness be intact and unbroken, even if it be for a minute. I'm going to repeat that. Be aware and let that awareness be intact and unbroken, even if it be for a minute. Sleep is essential. During sleep, one touches unknown depths that the conscious mind can never reach or experience. Though one may not remember the extraordinary experience of a world that is beyond the conscious or the unconscious, it has its effect on the total consciousness of the mind. Probably this is not very clear, but just read it and play around it. I feel there are certain things that can never be made clear. There are no adequate words for them, but nevertheless they are there. To have a body that will not be subject to any illness is important. You must easily, voluntarily put aside all the pleasurable memories and images so that your mind is free, uncontaminated for the real thing. Do please pay attention to what is written. Every experience, every thought must end each day, each minute as it arises, so that the mind does not put out roots into the future. This is really important, but this is true freedom. Again, every experience, every thought must end each day, each minute as it arises, so that the mind does not put out roots into the future. This is really important, for this is true freedom. Thus, there is no dependence, for dependence brings pain, affecting the physical and breeding psychological resistance. And resistance creates problems to achieve, to become perfect, and so on. In seeking is involved struggle, effort, endeavor. This endeavor, this struggle, invariably ends in frustration. I want something, or I want to be something. In the very process of getting is the craving for the more. And the more is never in sight. So there's always a sense of being thwarted. So there is pain. So once again, one turns to another form of fulfillment with its inevitable consequence. The implication of struggle, of effort, is vast. Why does one seek? Why does the mind everlastingly seek? And what makes it seek? Do you know? Or are you aware that you are seeking? If you are, the object of your search varies from period to period. Do you see the significance of search with its frustrations and pain? In the finding of something very gratifying, there is stagnation with its joys and fears, with its progress and becoming. If you are aware that you are seeking, is it possible for the mind not to seek? And if the mind does not seek, what is the immediate, actual reaction of a mind that does not seek? And if the mind does not seek, what is the immediate, actual reaction of a mind that does not seek? Play with this. Find out. Don't force anything. Don't let the mind coerce itself into any particular experience, for then it will breed for itself illusion. I saw someone who was dying. How frightened we are of death. What we are frightened of is living. We do not know how to live. We know sorrow, and death is only the final sorrow. We divide life as living and dying. Then there must be the ache of death with its separation, loneliness, and isolation. Life and death are one movement, not isolated states. Living is dying, dying to everything, to be reborn every day. Living is dying, dying to everything, to be reborn every day. This is not a theoretical statement, but to be lived and experienced. It is will, this constant desire to be, that completely destroys the simple being. This being, the simple being, is totally different from the sleep of satisfaction, fulfillment, or the conclusions of reason. This being, the simple being, is unaware of the self. A drug, an interest, an absorption, a complete identification can bring about a desired state, which is still self-conscious. True being is the cessation of the will. Play around with those thoughts and experiment happily. So, again, this is from this lovely, sweet little book called Happy is the One Who Is Nothing, Letters to a Young Friend by J. Krishnamurti. So, you know, in this, he underscores every experience, every thought must end each day, each minute as it arises, so that the mind does not put out roots into the future. So, you know, the mind doesn't go into the what ifs. This is really important, for this is true freedom. And then he says, Life and death are one movement. Living is dying, dying to everything, to be reborn each day, so that newness and freshness is born each day. When we're able to clean out that closet of the mind with all the images we have about ourselves, about others. All those thoughts that create those images. He says, die to that every day. The question is, can we do that? Are we capable of that? And I think we are. Maybe not continually, constantly, but as he said before, be aware, even if it's just for a minute, because the seeing is the doing. Well,
The seeing is the doing, because when you see it, it stops.
yeah. Now, it may only stop for a
Sure.
second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, but that stop
Mhm.
is tremendous.
Sure.
What do you think he means by freedom comes when the mind is alone? Does that mean when you're not grasping or clinging or that sort of thing?
That's right. I guess it's another way, I believe anyway, of saying when the mind is empty, not cluttered.
When the mind is not being responding responding to thoughts. When a thought arises, you let it go. You don't necessarily follow it, because like this in so many of the chapters in this little book that I've read, but this one in particular, it sums up just about all of what J.K. thinks about, what his philosophy is, you know. And to me, it's a reminder. I'm just not smart enough to keep all this stuff in my head. But when I read it, it reminds me, and it brings an awareness of what I'm doing, and it helps me to do it once in a while. I can't do it all the time, but I catch myself at times doing it as I'm reading this. So this is like a helper, a guide of how I go through my day.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you know, it is really, really hard for me to really see dying to every thought, getting up in the morning, an empty vessel, if you will, a non-judgmental seeing machine, if you will. And it really is hard. But I see as I go through the day that as I'm not looking at what I'm seeing through the past. I'm seeing through the thought mechanism, through the memory mechanism, and in psychological things, not in a lot. And boy, is that helpful for me. It really helps me get through a lot of junk. You know, I only hurt when I think about it. I create my hurt. And it's really, really been a tremendous thing for me to see that all the discomfort, everything bad that happens, I do it. Doesn't come from out there. It comes from right here. And the source of it is the memory banks.
So it's self-created misery,
Yep. Yep.
self-created worries, and self-created frustrated desire.
Yep. Because when something really bad does come from the outside, I don't know how to explain it, but you're in the moment, you're reacting to it.
Yes.
You know, you're trying to get out of the way of the bus, or you're trying to defend yourself from somebody hitting you, or whatever it is. And it's a different reaction. The garbage comes after, and then you start thinking about what happens, and then you start, you know, creating all the bullshit.
Right. Right.
Excuse my Italian.
No, that's true. That's true.
It's a terrific book. It really is. I mean,
Mhm.
it if I may, it's really nice to sort of like time get up and have it by your bedside, get up in the morning, and you know, I don't say my morning prayers, but I'll read a couple of lines out of this or chapters. It's just quick, boom, boom, boom. It's really refreshing.
It's like
to get up in the morning.
It's like a meditation.
Yep. Yeah, a guided meditation, right?
Mhm.
Or it's just a reminder. It's
Yep.
a reminder of to be aware of what's really important, and that is not to let my mind run me around.
Yep. It really has to be a difficult thing, I think, for a good many of us to look. I mean, especially myself at my age, at a ripe old age here, but most of us have been around for a number of years. And to see that most of the living that we've done, most of our life that we've done, we've been playing by a set of rules that don't work. They work to make you suffer. They work to make you unhappy. Unhappy because all the goals, the guidance that you've been given about being successful, being competitive, getting ahead, being a success, doing this, being that, being. And these are all platitudes that come from the outside, but there's something in us that's being repressed.
But Ugo, you're referencing all the wrong-headed ideas that make up a good part of the content of our consciousness.
Yep.
I think Krishnamurti is doing something else beyond that. He's pointing to the process of how we live our life. The process is that we allow that content to play unmindfully. We don't pay any attention to the content that's driving our thoughts, feelings, and reactions. We're on automatic. And he's saying, see the process that thoughts create feelings. Feelings, right, rule your reactions to things.
Yep.
So if you know the game plan, if you know the blueprint, if you know the operating procedure, the operating manual, maybe then you can begin to change the outcome.
Yeah.
Right.
Because if you have that knowledge, then you know how to do it, how to go about it. Or you get a clue at least. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, we've all been conditioned by the very nature of our upbringing. We're all so heavily conditioned.
But
Yeah.
it's not that only that we're conditioned. The larger point is that we're unaware that we're conditioned.
Yes.
Once you start shining the spotlight of awareness on your conditioning, you have a chance.
Yes.
Right? But if
Yes.
you're conditioned and you're unaware that you're living a conditioned, programmed, automatic kind of a life, then there's real misery.
Well, one of the ways I think that we become aware in the moment that we're conditioned is by our reactions and responses. Because I think that's where we tend to go on automatic. So that's when we respond to a hurt, or what we perceive as a hurt, or we respond to what we perceive as someone admiring us. I'm looking for words, I'm losing it. How we respond in the moment, how we react is from the past and is part of our conditioning. I think when we see really clearly what's going on in the moment, the what is, without even labeling it good or bad, just fully being present with the what is, then there is really in that moment no me, because me is the mind, me is the past. And when we react, that's what we're reacting from. So it's a challenge to see when we get triggered. What's getting triggered? What is it that's getting triggered? It's usually the image we have of who and what we are, based on our past conditioning of an experience, of a hurt, of a rejection, of a compliment, of a praise. That's what's reacting. Because you see, when there is no me, where is the reaction? Who or what is there to react? So it's fascinating. So, and now, but I think what Kay is saying here is that when there is that reaction, die to it. When there is that thought that that's projecting into the future, or that thought that's dwelling on the past, die to it. He says, die to it every moment it arises. I think that's absolutely fascinating. And to be able to do that. But as he said, don't force it. Don't condemn yourself if you're not doing it.
Well, so that's his suggestion on how you can interrupt
Yes,
the operating procedure.
that's right.
That's right.
And put a pin in
Right.
the conditioning.
Right.
In that moment, we put a pin in that conditioning. So that's the work. That's the if indeed we want to be free of this me. And there's nothing that's going to make that happen, because the ego, the me, doesn't want to be free. However, we are blessed with our true being, that simple being that he referred to in this little chapter, that simple being of awareness. And that is what shines the light in the moment of the me thinking, of the me response.
That's because that awareness that he's pointing to is non-judgmental. It just sees what is and doesn't make any judgment on it, which is, I have a hard time doing that. And I see myself almost constantly just judging. This is good. This is somewhere that there's a judgment involved. And the minute I become aware of that, I know it's the me operating. I know it's the me judging, and where it's coming from the content of my consciousness, which a lot of that has been conditioned. Those memories are conditioned memories. And I think once you get an understanding of that, which he's trying to explain, when you do get an awareness, you get a fuller understanding of the awareness that's happening, that it's coming from you and it's coming from your past thoughts and so on and so forth. Well, this is good stuff. I mean, and the thing that I like about this book is that it's simply written. It's not written like, Choiceless Awareness or some of his other books, where he's talking to a crowd and he's trying to appeal to a lot of people. This is more or less, he's addressing it to one person.
It has a more intimate feel.
Right. And I can more or less identify as myself being that person. Easier than when he's talking to a crowd.
It's interesting.
That's why this is I found this so delightful.
Yes, yes.
There's also the fact that we are all empty boats. And so if someone does, push our buttons, there's no self to have buttons pushed, right? For me and for the person who's doing it. So to me, that sort of lowers the temperature a bit when I think that we're all sort of empty boats, that, we're all no selves. And we do knock into each other now and again, but there's no reason to take that as too personal. Nothing is personal.
I think it's also interesting the way he points out that we're more or less always driven to pleasure, driven to getting satisfaction, driven to getting something pleasurable out of it, and how it's so difficult to really get an understanding that in that quest for pleasure, it's going to end up in sorrow. In that quest for satisfaction, in that quest for an achievement, an end, there's going to be disappointment. He uses the word frustration a lot.
Right.
And boy, can I identify with that. And by the same token, how difficult it is to put it into practice. Because since I can remember, we're like, in a sense, our parents, at least my parents, like I was a little dog. You get rewarded for doing certain things, and you like the ice cream, you really like the candy, or you like the kiss, or the caress, or the praise, or whatever it is. And from a very early age, you become addicted to that, and it's an addiction that's very hard to understand because it feels so good, and you want to feel good. But it's really hard for me to understand that desire eventually leads to the misery and the suffering and that eventually comes, because at some point that pleasure ends. And then you want more, and then there's frustration. It's really hard to see the implications of that. But that really resonates with me. It's very strong resonance of that point.
Well, it's interesting because there's a difference then between pleasure and love. When we're truly loved, then it isn't even about pleasure. And it isn't something that's like a reward that we're getting for being good. When one is truly loved, that's when there's less of a building up of a me, because you're not after a pleasure. You're not after a reward. There's a sense of really just being and knowing that that being is encased in love. I think, Ugo, most of us mix up pleasure with love. And certainly as children, we do.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? We don't have the capacity to really know the difference.
Sensuous. I mean, love is the implication is sensuous. It's sexual. It's an up feeling. It's on its own. It's none of those things, because all of those things refer to the ego, refer to this imaginary me. And you know, the love that Krishnamurti talks about is completely different. It's a love that creates that comes out of emptiness, and
Right.
there's no feeling as such. You know, it's hard for me to explain, but it has mostly nothing to do with what the contemporaries talk about love.
No, that's mixed up with pleasure.
Yeah.
The love that he's talking about, and the love that we're all seeking. You know, he says, what are you seeking? We're seeking love, to love and to be loved, but with that love which is not the opposite of hate. The love that has no opposite.
Right.
That's what we're seeking. But I don't know if we're looking in the right direction.
That's the point.
Well, I think did you want to say anything else, Paul?
No, I think looking in the right direction, every child wants to feel loved, and hopefully has an upbringing where they do feel genuinely loved for who they are. That's what every child wants and needs at certain points. Yeah. But us who are no longer stuck in childhood have to follow the dictum that the unexamined life is often not worth living. And so this is an opportunity to examine our life and see where the things that we cherish or long for or chase after don't bring us a genuine feeling of being loved or a genuine feeling of happiness, and to just watch ourselves moving down false paths that are going to just result in a continued feeling of lack and being less than.
Right.
And as you said earlier, that's the work of just seizing every opportunity that comes to me to observe myself lost in thought, projecting ahead, being critical of myself or another. And as you say, the seeing is the doing. As soon as I see it, I don't continue doing it. I move my attention to something rooted in the here and now that requires my efforts, whether it's a task, a chore, or being kind to someone. That's living in the moment, not projecting ahead and making myself envious, sad, nervous, anxious, or depressed in an imaginary future or a regretful past. And every day we wake up with that possibility available to us.
Reborn.
Yeah. But the challenge is to remember that we have that opportunity and not just go on automatic. So if you get used to looking within, rather than just being outwardly chasing everything, turning inward, being more aware of what the mind is churning up on the movie screen in our head, then we have an opportunity to live a truer life.
Mhm.
Well, this was a nice little book, as you said. It was very. It had a nice tender feeling. We should stick with it.
Okay, okay. Let's stick with it for a while.
Great.
Okay, so I think we'll end it here for tonight.
Lovely.
Good.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great
Good,
seeing you
thank
all.
you for joining
Good
us.
seeing you
Thank
all.
you.
Thank
I
you.
meant to do
Yeah,
it
that's
last
what
week.
I wanna say.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Sarah.
Ciao.
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 Ciao. Bye.